One of these cars uses a 24-liter aircraft engine and still holds a racetrack record from 1935. Another has a 46-liter V12 and brakes that appear to have been selected as a joke. These 8 machines reveal what happened when engineers put wings aside and aimed aviation power directly at the road, the ground problem. An aircraft engine is designed for a very different life from a car engine. It usually produces enormous power at relatively low engine speed. It expects strong airflow, careful maintenance, and long periods under steady load. Weight matters, reliability matters, smoothness matters. Parking does not. Neither does reversing into a supermarket space while the engine consumes enough fuel to affect regional pricing. During the first half of the 20th century, aero engines became irresistible to racing drivers and wealthy eccentrics. Surplus engines were available after wars. Record hunters needed more power than normal car manufacturers could provide. Engineers looked at giant V12s, W12s, and inline sixes built to pull aircraft through the sky and asked the obvious question: could this fit in a car? The correct answer was usually no. They fitted it anyway. This list includes genuine cars powered by engines designed for aviation. That distinction removes one famous imposter. The Fiat S76, better known as the Beast of Turin, used a 28.4-liter four-cylinder engine and behaved like an industrial furnace escaping downhill. But its engine was purpose-built for the record car rather than taken from an aircraft design. It is magnificent. It simply brought the wrong paperwork to this particular disaster. Number 8. Mephistopheles. The Fiat Mephistopheles began as a 1908 Grand Prix racing car and ended as something much less reasonable. British racing driver Ernest Eldridge acquired the old Fiat chassis and decided its original engine lacked ambition. He installed a Fiat A12 aircraft engine, a massive inline-six developed during the First World War. The engine displaced approximately 21.7 liters, 6 cylinders, more than 3.5 liters per cylinder. A modern economy car could fit its entire engine inside one combustion chamber and still have room to feel insecure. The A12 had powered aircraft and airships. In Eldridge's car, it produced roughly 300 horsepower, although period figures vary depending on specification and engine speed. Eldridge lengthened the chassis to contain it. The body was assembled with the direct elegance of a metal container built around an emergency. Exposed exhaust pipes ran along the side. The tall, narrow shape placed the driver behind a bonnet that appeared to reach the next postal district. The car received the nickname Mephistopheles, after the demonic figure from the Faust legend. It suited the noise. In July 1924, Eldridge drove the Fiat on a public road near Arpajon, France, during a record attempt against René Thomas in a Delage. Eldridge achieved 234.98 kilometers per hour, or just over 146 miles per hour. The run became controversial because the Fiat initially lacked reverse gear, which the regulations required. The record was challenged. Eldridge returned after modifying the transmission and completed another successful attempt. The performance is difficult to appreciate today. The road surface was narrow and uneven. The tires were tall and thin. The suspension used solid axles and leaf springs. The brakes belonged to an era when slowing down was often treated as a future engineering project. The engine delivered tremendous torque through a chain drive system while the driver sat exposed behind it. At 146 miles per hour, Mephistopheles did not merely travel fast. It negotiated with every component simultaneously. The car survives in Fiat's historical collection and remains one of the clearest examples of early aero engine thinking. There was no subtle integration. The engine was the concept. Everything else existed to keep it pointed approximately forward. Number 7. Chitty Bang Bang. Before the flying movie car, there were real racing cars called Chitty Bang Bang. Count Louis Zborowski built a series of enormous machines at his estate in England during the early 1920s. They combined pre-war luxury car chassis with surplus aircraft engines and a sense of proportion usually discouraged by adult supervision. The first Chitty used a Maybach 6-cylinder aero engine of roughly 23 liters installed in a lengthened Mercedes chassis. The Maybach engine had been designed for German airships and aircraft during the First World War. It produced tremendous low-speed torque and required a vehicle with enough structure to avoid becoming a brief collection of moving parts. Zborowski and his engineer, Captain Clive Gallup, created a long, narrow body with minimal protection for the occupants. The exhaust ran openly along the side. The car competed at Brooklands, the steeply banked British racing circuit where speed, concrete, and optimism met regularly. The name supposedly came from a crude song sung by soldiers, although later family entertainment improved the spelling's reputation considerably. Chitty was fast but temperamental. Its massive engine could overwhelm tires, transmission parts, and the patience of anyone trying to start it. The car's size made normal racing lines feel theoretical. Zborowski built several machines under the Chitty name. Chitty 2 used another large Maybach engine and became more suitable for road touring. Chitty 3 used a Mercedes aircraft engine. A later car, known as Haim Special, used a 27-liter Liberty V12 and eventually became Babs, which appears later in this list. The original Chitty cars mattered because they established aero-engined monsters as a recognizable British racing tradition. These were not refined factory programs. They were private engineering projects created by wealthy enthusiasts who had access to surplus military hardware and very little interest in moderation. They also influenced author Ian Fleming, who later wrote the children's story Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. The fictional car could fly. The real one had already borrowed the important part. Number 6, Brutus. Brutus looks like a vintage racing car designed by someone who had only seen racing cars described over the telephone. It was built in Germany using a 1907 American LaFrance fire engine chassis and a BMW VI aircraft engine. The BMW VI is a 46.9-liter V12. That number deserves a pause. 46.9 liters. A modern Ford Mustang GT uses a 5-liter V8. Brutus carries more than 9 Mustangs of engine displacement and still has 4 fewer cylinders than 9 Mustangs would provide, because mathematics has also become uncomfortable. The BMW VI was developed in the 1920s for aircraft. It powered military and civilian machines and produced hundreds of horsepower at low RPM. In Brutus, output is often quoted around 500 horsepower, though exact figures depend on engine condition and fuel mixture. Torque is the real event. The engine can produce several thousand pound-feet, enough to make the rear tires consider a career change. Brutus was created by the Auto and Technik Museum in Sinsheim as an experimental demonstration of the giant aero-engined racers built between the wars. It is therefore not an original period competition car, but it uses genuine historical components and follows the same brutal engineering logic. The body is minimal, the frame is exposed, the exhaust pipes run straight out from the engine and release flames, noise, and any remaining belief in indoor conversation. The car uses chain drive to the rear axle. Starting it requires careful preparation, external equipment, and people who understand that a minor mistake may become a documentary. Top speed claims vary, but the museum wisely operates Brutus as a demonstration machine rather than attempting to discover its final aerodynamic opinion. The chassis was designed for a fire engine from 1907. The tires are narrow, the steering is direct, the brakes have been improved from period specification, but the relationship between available acceleration and available courage remains badly unbalanced. Brutus is important because it demonstrates how aero engines change the character of a car before it moves. The machine does not look powered by an engine, it looks attached to one. Number 5. The Packard Bentley. The Packard Bentley is also known as Mavis, which sounds far too polite for a car with a 42-liter V12 aircraft engine. British enthusiast Chris Williams built the machine using a 1930 Bentley chassis and a Packard 4M 2500 engine. The Packard engine was originally designed for American military patrol boats and developed from Packard's aviation engine expertise. Closely related V12 designs served in aircraft and marine applications, placing Mavis firmly within the aero engine tradition, even though this particular unit's military role was marine. The engine displaces roughly 2,500 cubic inches. That is about 41 liters. It produces around 1,500 horsepower in this installation. depending on tune and operating conditions. The engine alone is longer than the career of some modern compact cars. Williams built a special chassis and body around the enormous power plant while preserving the appearance of a giant pre-war Bentley Special. The car has a long green bonnet, exposed exhaust outlets, a boat-tail rear body, and wheels that look appropriately substantial until the engine begins running. The Packard V12 uses twin superchargers and creates an exhaust note somewhere between a racing car and an air raid returning for forgotten paperwork. Mavis is road registered in Britain. That fact raises several questions, beginning with what the examiner wrote in the section marked engine capacity. The car can travel at serious speed, but cruising rather than maximum velocity is the attraction. The huge engine produces effortless torque. Low engine speed creates rapid movement without the frantic sensation of a smaller performance engine. Fuel consumption is equally effortless. The Packard Bentley reportedly consumes fuel at a rate that makes miles per gallon feel unnecessarily optimistic. Gallons per mile would provide a more emotionally honest conversation. The car is not historically pure in the museum sense. Bentley never built it. Packard never intended the engine for a road car. It is a modern special assembled in the tradition of Brooklands monsters. That is exactly why it belongs here. The aero-engined car did not disappear with the 1930s. It survived wherever a person looked at a surviving giant engine and decided preservation required a throttle pedal. Number 4. Babs. Babs began as Count Zborowski's Hayam Special and used a 27-liter Liberty L12 aircraft engine. The Liberty was one of America's most important First World War aero engines. Developed rapidly in 1917, the water-cooled V12 powered aircraft and later found use in tanks, boats, and racing machines. Zborowski installed one in a chain-driven chassis created for land speed work. After his death in a racing accident in 1924, Welsh engineer and driver J.G. Perry Thomas acquired the car, rebuilt it, and renamed it Babs. Again, an unexpectedly gentle name. A 27-liter V12 called Babs is like naming a battleship Susan. Perry Thomas modified the body, engine, and drivetrain and took the car to Pendine Sands in Wales. In April 1926, he set a land speed record at more than 171 miles per hour. Malcolm Campbell later reclaimed the record. Perry Thomas returned to Pendine in March 1927 to try again. During the attempt, Babs crashed at high speed, killing him. The precise cause has been debated. For years, the story claimed a drive chain broke and struck the driver. Later examinations suggested a rear wheel failure may have caused the accident. Whatever the cause, the result ended the car's first life. Babs was buried in the sand dunes at Pendine. The burial was practical and emotional. The wreck was badly damaged, and the death of Perry Thomas gave the machine a grim reputation. More than 40 years later, engineering lecturer Owen Wine Owen received permission to excavate the remains. He began a long restoration using original components where possible and recreating missing sections through historical research. Babs returned to running condition in the 1970s. Its survival is extraordinary. The car is not merely an aero-engined special. It is a land speed record machine recovered from the beach where it killed its driver. When Babs runs today, the Liberty V12 produces a deep, uneven thunder. Exposed chains carry power toward the rear wheels. The tall body and narrow tires preserve the terrifying visual logic of the original machine. The restoration did not make the car safe by modern standards. It made history audible. Number 3. Sunbeam 350 HP. The Sunbeam 350 HP was built in 1919 and 1920 around an 18.3-liter Sunbeam Manitou V12 aircraft engine. The Manitou had been developed for aviation during the First World War. When the conflict ended, Sunbeam chief engineer Louis Coatellen adapted the engine for a land speed machine. The car used a 4-speed gearbox and shaft drive rather than the exposed chains found on several rivals. Its narrow, streamlined body placed the driver behind the giant engine, surrounded by very little structure and several excellent reasons to remain focused. The name 350 HP reflected the advertised engine output, although modifications and operating conditions changed the exact figure. Can-Am Lee Guinness drove the Sunbeam to a land speed record in 1922 at Brooklands, reaching more than 133 miles per hour. Malcolm Campbell then acquired the car, painted it blue, and renamed it Bluebird. Campbell used the Sunbeam to set records at Pendine Sands in 1924 and again in 1925, eventually exceeding 150 miles per hour. This was the beginning of the Bluebird legend that Campbell continued with increasingly powerful record cars. The Sunbeam mattered because it bridged two eras. Earlier record cars often looked like enlarged road racers. Later machines became specialized land speed vehicles shaped around aerodynamics and extreme power. The 350 HP combined both approaches. It retained visible wheels, a conventional driving position, and recognizable pre-war car proportions. But its engine and mission belonged to a different scale. The National Motor Museum later restored the car and returned it to running condition. That work required careful attention to the Manitou engine, which had not been designed for easy modern parts supply. When the Sunbeam runs, the sound is surprisingly mechanical rather than theatrical. 12 large cylinders fire through open exhaust outlets, while gears, valves, and pumps create their own separate arguments. The car's record speeds now fall below what a modern sports sedan can achieve. That comparison is useless. The modern sedan has radial tires, hydraulic brakes, computer-controlled stability, crash structures, precise steering, and windows. The Sunbeam had courage and a beach. Number 2. The Beast. The Beast is a road-legal car powered by a 27-liter Rolls-Royce Merlin V12. That sentence sounds like folklore created after several drinks. The car is real. British engineer Paul Jameson began the project in the 1960s. He installed a Rolls-Royce Meteor engine in a custom chassis. The Meteor was the non-supercharged tank engine derivative of the Merlin aircraft V12. Jameson later sold the unfinished project to automatic transmission specialist John Dodd. Dodd completed the car and used a General Motors automatic transmission modified to survive the torque. The vehicle initially wore a Rolls-Royce grille because the engine family came from Rolls-Royce. The company did not appreciate this interpretation of brand identity and pursued legal action. After losing the case, Dodd removed the famous grille and later fitted a different front design. The car became known simply as the Beast. Over time, accounts of the engine changed. The best-known later configuration used a genuine Rolls-Royce Merlin aircraft engine, often described as producing around 750 horsepower in road tune. The Merlin-powered aircraft, including the Spitfire, Hurricane, Mosquito, and Lancaster. Packard also manufactured it under license in the United States for aircraft including later versions of the P-51 Mustang. In the Beast, the engine sits beneath an enormous bonnet attached to a long two-door body. The front resembles a large custom coupe. The rear resembles an estate car that has heard disturbing news. The car was once listed by Guinness as the world's most powerful road car. Performance claims include top speeds above 180 miles per hour, although verified figures and configurations vary. More important is the experience. The Merlin produces huge torque at low RPM. The car accelerates in long, relentless waves rather than requiring high engine speed. The bonnet seems to stretch toward the destination before the driver has fully joined it. Cooling, fuel delivery, transmission durability, and steering all required custom solutions. The engine was designed to operate in an aircraft with constant airflow, not in traffic behind a delivery van. The Beast became famous through magazine appearances, legal controversy, and Dodd's willingness to drive it regularly across Europe. It was not a static showpiece. It was a functioning road car with an engine from one of history's most famous aircraft families. The strongest evidence of British eccentricity is not that someone built it, it is that someone else ensured it. Number 1. Napier Railton. The Napier Railton is the complete aero-engined racing car, not the largest, not the most powerful, the most successful combination of aircraft engine, chassis, driver, and purpose. John Cobb commissioned the car in 1933. Reed Railton designed it, and Thompson and Taylor built it at Brooklands. The engine was a Napier Lion, a 24-liter W12 originally originally developed for aircraft. The Lion arranged 12 cylinders in 3 banks of 4, creating a broad aero layout. That unusual configuration kept the engine relatively compact for its displacement and produced 3 separate rows of exhaust outlets. The naturally aspirated engine delivered roughly 500 horsepower, with exact output depending on specification and test conditions. More extraordinary was the torque, often quoted above 1,200 pound-feet. The engine turned slowly by racing standards. Maximum power arrived below 3,000 rpm. The car used a 3-speed non-synchromesh gearbox because additional ratios would only create more opportunities for the drivetrain to file a complaint. The Napier Railton was enormous, but beautifully proportioned. Its polished aluminum body narrowed toward a pointed tail. The driver sat high behind the engine with a small windscreen and no meaningful protection. Cobb used the car at Brooklands, Mont-Lahari, and the Bonneville Salt Flats. Between 1933 and 1937, it set or contributed to dozens of speed and endurance records. Its greatest achievement came at Brooklands in 1935. Cobb lapped the outer circuit at an average of 143.44 miles per hour. That record still stands, not because nobody has built a faster car, because Brooklands closed for racing during the Second World War and never reopened in its original form. The track's steep concrete banking was rough, broken, and shaped by ground movement. At high speed, the car became airborne over bumps and compressed violently into the surface. Drivers aimed toward the upper banking and managed slides at speeds most road cars of the period could not reach in a straight line. The Napier Railton's giant torque allowed it to accelerate without constant shifting. Its long wheelbase provided stability. The aircraft engine could sustain heavy load for extended record runs. This was where aero power made complete sense. Brooklands rewarded sustained speed, durability, and the ability to carry momentum around a huge banked circuit. The car's disadvantages in normal traffic did not matter because normal traffic was not invited. After the war, the Napier Railton served briefly in tests involving aircraft braking parachutes. It later passed through private ownership before Brooklands Museum acquired it. The museum maintains the car in running condition. Seeing it move is different from seeing any modern supercar. A modern car controls combustion, traction, suspension, braking, and airflow through computers. The Napier Railton turns fuel into noise, torque, and forward movement with almost no attempt to hide the process. The engine dominates the car physically and emotionally. Every exhaust pulse is visible in the body's movement. Every gear change requires commitment. Every acceleration run appears to use the entire horizon. That is why the Napier Railton takes number 1. It was not merely a car with an aircraft engine. It was an aircraft engine given the perfect ground mission. The engineering problem. Installing an aero engine in a car requires far more than creating enough space. The first problem is gearing. Aircraft propellers operate within a limited speed range. Many piston aero engines produce maximum power at only 2,000 or 3,000 rpm. A car engine may turn far faster. The transmission and axle must convert immense low-speed torque into usable road speed. Normal gearboxes can fail immediately. Clutches can slip, drive shafts can twist, chains can break, rear axles can develop sudden religious beliefs. The second problem is cooling. An aircraft engine receives powerful airflow during flight. A car may sit stationary after a high-speed run with the engine producing tremendous heat and no propeller forcing air through the radiator. Builders need huge radiators, strong pumps, careful plumbing, and sometimes auxiliary fans. The third problem is weight distribution. A giant engine placed ahead of the driver can make the front axle carry an unreasonable load. Steering becomes heavy. Front tires work harder. The chassis must resist twisting under torque. Then comes fuel. Large aero engines were not developed around economy. Several consume gallons during warm-up and can empty ordinary automotive tanks before the driver has finished explaining the car. Finally, there is braking. Many early machines combined aircraft power with braking systems derived from ordinary cars or racing technology of the same period. Acceleration entered the modern world before stopping received the address. Why build them? Aero-engined cars existed because aircraft development moved faster than automotive engine development. War accelerated that process. Governments funded powerful lightweight engines without worrying about showroom price. When conflicts ended, surplus units became available to private owners and engineers. A racing driver could obtain an engine producing several hundred horsepower at a time when a normal luxury car offered a fraction of that amount. The temptation was obvious. Land speed racing also had simple priorities: power, stability, and enough space to accelerate. Fuel economy, luggage capacity, quietness, and low-speed manners were irrelevant. An aircraft engine's strengths matched the job. Private wealth made the rest possible. Count Zborowski, John Cobb, Malcolm Campbell, and other competitors could fund experimental machines. Skilled engineers and mechanics converted imagination into metal. Failure was common. That was accepted. The driver did not expect a warranty department to investigate why a 24-liter W12 had removed third gear from the vehicle. Aircraft or tank? The subject contains one technical trap. Not every engine described as a Merlin car engine is actually a Merlin. The Rolls-Royce Meteor was developed from the Merlin for use in tanks. It shared major architecture, but normally lacked the Merlin's supercharger and used different components for ground operation. A Meteor-powered car is therefore using an engine derived from aviation rather than an operational aircraft engine. The distinction matters, especially with the Beast, which has been described with both engine types during its long and complicated history. The same issue appears with Packard V12s adapted across aviation and marine roles. Engine families moved between aircraft, boats, tanks, and record cars because their basic strengths remained useful. That does not make every example fraudulent. It makes the history more interesting than a simple badge. The correct question is not only where the individual engine served, it is what the engine was designed to do and how its architecture traveled between machines. The honest verdict: were aircraft engines good car engines? Usually no. They were too large, too thirsty, too hot, too expensive, and too destructive to normal drivetrains. They made steering difficult and braking urgent. They required custom chassis, special gearboxes, and patient owners with industrial fuel budgets. But in the right car, an aero engine could be magnificent. Mephistopheles used aviation power to chase a public road record. Chitty Bang Bang turned surplus airship technology into Brooklands theater. Brutus demonstrated what 47 liters does to the concept of proportion. The Packard Bentley carried the tradition into the modern era. Babs set a record, killed its driver, disappeared into a beach, and returned decades later. The Sunbeam 350 HP began Malcolm Campbell's Bluebird story. The Beast made a Merlin-related V12 into a road-going legal dispute, and the Napier Railton found the perfect place for a giant aircraft engine, then set a lap record that history made permanent. These cars were not practical transportation. They were engineering arguments. The engine said it belonged in the sky. The builder said the road would be sufficient. Which aero-engined monster would you dare to drive? Choose one in the comments. And remember, the correct answer may depend on whether the route contains corners, traffic, or any expectation of stopping.